There we go. All right. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. My name is Nicholas Rose,
I'm Maya Gorse.
and we would like to, of course, thank you guys for joining us for another DIS Alumni Networking event. This event was put together by our lovely DIS Executive Board, consisting of Maya Gorse, Gabby Helmer, Arya Swami, Zoe Puno, Luke Elliott, Ari Fernandez, Nicholas Rose, and Katie Sears. This also, of course, can be done with the help of our amazing DSIS alumni. Those on the panel, you may introduce yourselves.
If Aaron, if you could start, that'd be really great.
Great. I'm Aaron Squire. I graduated in 2014. Yes, 2013, sorry. And currently work as a product design engineer at Square.
I don't know the order, but I'll go next. Of course, we always talk the same. Hey, I'm Logan. I graduated in 2017/2018. I've been at Apple for 6 years now as a product design engineer.
I can go next. I'm Andrea Ecclesia. I graduated in 2016 with a dual in mechanical engineering. And I've been at Unilever working on packaging design for the past 5 years.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. I'm Fariha. I graduated, same as Andrea, actually, with the Mechie Dual in 2019 with my undergrad, and then I stayed an extra year for co-term, so I left finally in 2019. And I've been at Shark Ninja for the last 4 years.
I think I'm last. Hi, everyone. I'm Austin. I graduated in 2014, the end of 2014, as a PDI management or DIS management. Shared a cubicle with Aaron at Hasbro. Yeah, and I've worked at a lot of companies in-house. I was at IBM in New York. And I worked in-house at a lot of tech companies in China for 6 years, and I now freelance as a branding and motion designer from Cape Town, South Africa. So it's my evening. But yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Thank you all. So again, the format for this event is it's going to be portfolio review. First, we're going to have students present a single one of their portfolio pages, and they've all been paired up with one of our alum who will then, as they showcase the page, give feedback and different kind of crits. And then the alum share cases their portfolio where they show how those crits have kind of been implemented and how they've used those. And without further ado, we can begin with Alex and Logan. Alex, if you would share your screen and a page of your portfolio.
Sure. Give me 1 second here. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Do you see this okay?
Yes.
Yes. Awesome. All right. Brief introduction for me. My name is Alex Leclerc. I'm a senior Mechie DIS. I am presenting my project, the Red Hawk, today. So I'm curious, actually, how many of you guys, you alumni, are familiar with the class Manufacturing Processes and Systems? I can see a couple of you. I see a nod or two. Yeah, familiar? Yeah? Okay, cool. This, in my opinion, is one of the coolest classes RPI offers. And this project is actually from that. So I got to take my DIS design skills and bring it into engineering to work as a design engineer and a manufacturing manager. So this project exists within that class's scope. So the way that the class operates is it is a sponsored class by all of the people you can see here on this page, Mastercam, Boeing, a couple other companies here. They provide funding to allow students to mass manufacture 300 assemblies in-house. So we get to choose what our project is. It's not necessarily solely selected off of any design constraint. We just have the opportunity to make what we want. So we want to make something fun, and we decided we want to make the Red Hawk. Believe it or not, we had a mascot, the Red Hawk, in like the late 1990s or something. So we decided that we wanted to play off of that, keep an RPI theme with our project. My sole purpose on this is, as manufacturing manager, is to oversee the entire manufacturing of this. Now, this is a 2-semester long course, the first semester of which was purely design. So everything you're looking at here, I didn't necessarily CAD all the parts, but I had a touch in every single part that was made here. A lot of this is centrally focused on engineering, but I served as the primary design lead. So any new design change had to run through me before we implemented it. And the main focuses here were designed for manufacturability. So as we move on to the second page here, you can see there's a rough initial concept that I CAD'd up real quick. This is all done in Siemens NX, just to kind of get a little idea of how this would look in physical form. And you can see how this immediately implicated some design challenges. So we moved on to the Mark II, which really considered how can we design something for manufacturability. So the Mark II, you have some basic outlines. These are the 3 primary CAD pieces I was responsible for: the right and left fuselage and the tail boom. Now the 2 fuselages are a plastic injection molded part, and the third is a manufactured part on a CNC mill. And you can see what we had to do over time was really improve the design for manufacturability aspects of these, and you can see those done on the drawings to the right. So I was the primary design lead, so I focused both on the aesthetics. So I had to convince a bunch of engineers that aesthetics were important, and still have to now that the parts are being made. But I had to also make the parts manufacturable. A lot of times as designers, I feel like we would forget that these parts have to actually be physically implemented in the real world. So a lot of the design iterations here were really understanding, will this tool fit in this place? And how can I still make this part look good? You can see how we improved that with some digital simulations to make sure they were indeed manufacturable. This is used Autodesk Mold Flow. And the end of this project, I have not updated this to include the end of the semester because we haven't finished the project yet. It's still in progress. But this goes up to my design of the molds for the plastic injection molds, their insert molds, as well as a couple other tooling pieces. So this actually includes an assembly fixture as well that I made in CAD. We moved forward with this project with a rapid prototype to show the form and the function of it, as well as documenting everything that we did in a technical data package, which was 173 pages, is well over 250 at this point. And moving forward, we're in the process of manufacturing right now. We just finished the right and left fuselage on our PIM, and we are in the process of manufacturing this tail boom. So my job really encompasses maintaining the integrity of this design continually throughout all of it, and also managing the team of 15 we have to ensure that the parts get made in time. So that is this project for you. Generally, the questions I would have for you are, what do you think of the formatting, and what do you think I could include that I might be missing? But I'd like to hear your feedback as well.
Yeah, awesome. Well, first of all, I think it looks great overall. I think it's a cool project, and I think the messaging comes through well. I like the images, and you have a good balance of text and like the images of what you're trying to describe. I guess before I give too much feedback, though, I want to understand, I guess, what are your interests for like a role that you would be submitting this to? Like, do you want to come through more in the manufacturing sense? Do you want to come through as a designer? I guess that's the part that I want to understand first, because I think you can send a lot of messages with this depending on how you format it or how the kind of content that you include. So what is your, I guess, interest?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I have a lot of interest in the design aspect of manufacturing. So being at more of the front end, I don't know if I would go up toward like the industrial design, pure sketching stage. A lot of because of DIS and MECI is somewhere between the two. So I'd say design engineer, product design engineer, something in that.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, I think in that sense, I think you have some good content here. I think the only thing I might include that might be missing from this is, what are your criteria for like developing a good part? So how are you assessing that you've made the parts that you intended to make, whether that's like cosmetic checks or dimensional checks? Like once you produce the part, how do you know that it's a good part? So those are some things that you might want to include. For the mold flow simulation, I'm not sure, what were they simulating here? Do you know? Did you run these simulations or something?
I did run them. So in order to make sure that your part can be manufactured by PIM, we had to make sure that we could select a specific injection point and the plastic would make it
Mm.
throughout the entirety of the part.
I
Basically.
see. Okay. Yeah, I think if you want to kind of turn this to be a little bit more design focused, I'm not sure if you run any simulations for like warpage or deformation or something like that, or even like where you might see like weld lines or where the two flow fronts come together and what those might mean for the integrity of the part. Some of those things might be a little bit more interesting to show here because then you can kind of describe like what that means for your design. Like these are the things that we're a little bit worried about it. This warpage might lead to these parts not fitting too well. Those kind of things that you can kind of get a little bit more product focused about, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And then I think yeah, I like the focus on manufacturing here because it does show that you have a deep knowledge of that and how you make these parts. There might be a way to focus a little bit more on the function of the product that you're trying to make. So I saw at the top it was a pencil sharpener. So that might be something that you want to kind of like pull into this a little bit more, maybe even like showing an image of the pencil or how it fits in, how it works with this product. And then maybe the materials that you would use and select for that purpose. What materials make that a good pencil sharpener, or how do you validate that it's a good pencil sharpener? Those kind of things maybe. I know that you have a lot of text and stuff on here already, so it's just a matter of kind of maybe swapping some images. Maybe I don't want to make this longer, but
Would you say
maybe pulling it.
would you say less text would be beneficial?
I want to say yes. I think maybe you can probably pull out some of this, the course overview, and just kind of let that bleed through in the content that you're producing here and showing, and make it more focused about what the steps of the design process were and how you created this product. And I would make the course content come through just in your development of this product.
Sure. That makes sense to me.
But I think
What do you
overall
think?
it's a good balance. I think like this page specifically, I think has a good balance of pictures and words. I think a lot of people will spend time looking at the images, but if you're in an interview, you'll be talking through these things and they'll have questions for you regardless. So I think this is a good amount of text. You don't want to go more than that.
Awesome. Thank you. 3 pages okay with this? I know we said we're trying to limit the number of pages for this, but in a, let's say like 10-page portfolio. 3 pages, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Like, I think 3 pages of describing it in detail like this is definitely sufficient. If you're gonna go more, you can kind of like, you could go into just more images of like, or animations of the part maybe, or keeping it more visual focused, if they really are interested in seeing those aspects. But I think this is a good a summary. Yeah, three pages should be enough. I don't know if you played around with animations in like SolidWorks or NX, but that could be a cool tool as well if you want to go above and beyond and have like the rotor spinning or your pencil sharpener rotating. That could be a cool little bonus. But
this is supposed to be a printed PDF type of resume, so I didn't do that. But I agree. I think that would be really cool. If I were to
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, if you have like a digital portfolio at all, if you want to build like a Wix or whatever square page or something like that, that could be a good way to showcase it as well.
Awesome. Okay. Any other considerations you think I should have for this? Any other advice?
I think I touched on the material a little bit. That might be something that they would definitely ask about in like interviews for product design roles, as like material selection. So that's something you might want to touch on. Again, like I don't want to make this longer or more complicated. So obviously try and balance it with the content here, but material selection would definitely be interesting, like what you chose and why. Why does it benefit the function? Why is it important for this specific manufacturing method? those kind of things you might want to touch on a little bit just to show your mechanical breadth of you have technical background in manufacturing, but also material selection and also designing this part for a specific function, those kind of things.
Sure. Okay. Understood.
Logan, if you'd like to share kind of yours to show Alex some examples.
I don't think I have any good examples for you, to be honest. Yeah,
That's
I mainly wanted to focus on your stuff. I think mine hasn't been updated in a really long time. So, but yeah, I built a website and kind of showed some of my key projects on there. I thought it was a little bit easier just because I like to show the animations and kind of make it a little bit more fun to click around. So that's something that you might want to think about in the future. But it is nice to have a hard copy when you're walking through a career fair or talking to somebody. But I think like, especially for career fairs, they're going to spend less time like reading through all the details of it and kind of just looking at it and asking you questions. But yeah, that's my advice there. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in or add to this.
Yeah, can I ask, what is for the students, were you asked to do specifically like a PDF or like a sort of analog version of the portfolio? It seems odd to me that as a designer, you wouldn't go right to like a website, or even there's so many tools now on like the branding side of things. We use like, we build entire decks in Figma and stuff. And it's like always online, always updated. So I think I understand if it's like you have to put together a PDF to fulfill like an ask from the course, or like, or yeah, like what Logan said, a career fair. But I would say like the tools have even moved past like just a website, and things like Canva and Figma allow for you to basically have the same sort of portfolio format in like a slide deck form, but like always online and always viewable and updatable and shareable with a link, which I think is like a core piece.
I don't think there isn't a requirement in any of the courses I've been to specifically. I made this portfolio printable specifically because I had a meeting with someone that I wanted to physically give to.
Got it.
I also didn't have the time or capability to make a website. So
come on, you can do it. The tools are so easy now.
I definitely could now.
You can definitely do it.
At the time when I made it,
you're an engineer. You can definitely do it. But yeah, I understand. I think just from like my perspective and kind of like the more traditional graphic design branding side, like I've been on some teams where we won't even, when we're recruiting for roles, if you're not in our system with like like we just won't even get to the stage where we can consider you, because we're not going to accept like a file upload or anything. It's just like sharing like bulk emails or messages of links to portfolios. So just from my perspective, I'm not like on the engineering or product design of things, but purely from the graphic design side.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. It's always nice, even if the resume has a link on it, people will click on it 100%. So they will click on it and look it up. So that's an easy way to integrate it into a simple resume. Or
Cool, thank you. Does Farah and Trinity want to start? So if Trinity could pull up their portfolio, that'd be really great.
Yeah, hi. Okay, so hi, I'm Trinity. I'm a DIS and information technology dual student. This is my portfolio. It's a website hosted on Cargo. And this was a project I did for Design Studio 2 with Jim. And yeah, so it's basically, we had to do this aesthetic study into a prominent industrial designer. And this was a partner project, and we designed a series of reading lamps based off of the prompts. Yeah. So here it starts out just we followed the pretty basic design process with our research and the mood board, then ideation, sketching, so on and so forth. And then I did a model of all the lights. I reorganized it so that came in a little bit earlier, just because that kind of defined the appearance of the lights a bit more clearly, I think. And then we moved on to rough prototypes, final prototypes, and then these are the beauty shots that we had. Yeah.
Cool. Are we jumping into feedback?
Yeah, I mean, for specific feedback that I'm sort of looking for, this is mostly for recruiters in terms of like, I'm applying mostly to industrial design, like
Okay.
preferably in the earlier stages of the process where it's more ideation, sort of like aesthetic studies. So I'm kind of wondering whether my storytelling, even without the words, because I know they tend to like skim through these quite quickly, whether it's clear, like you can see the process that's happening. And also any feedback or advice you might have on reducing the word count, because I know in certain parts it's pretty text heavy that I'd like to reduce. And then just in terms of like visuals and like the graphic design of this whole site, I'm wondering whether it's okay. It's not 100% minimalistic, I guess. So I'm wondering whether that's something I should increase or decrease. Yeah.
Gotcha. So you said you're looking at kind of industrial design roles.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, perfect. I would like to start by saying, I looked at your portfolio beforehand and I was hoping you would pick this one because I love it so much.
Oh, great.
Love the ideation. I love that you have so many sketches that kind of show your thought process. That's actually one of the biggest things when I'm interviewing, I'm looking for, because, you know, anyone can show you a final product, but how did you get there? And that's really important to me as like a hiring manager. So love all the visuals. And also, I really like that you call out your role. So what exactly you did in the project. So that would be like advice for anyone on the call, really, to make sure that you guys are calling out how you contributed to the final design. One thing I would say, maybe the hierarchy. I know you do have the sections, and maybe that's where the text comes into play a little bit. I personally, again, skimming fast, like you mentioned, that is real. So I would say maybe like bullet points could be really nice. I know like when you really want to get into like the problem definition, you want to have a couple of sentences, that's fine. But for the main message, bullet points could be good. I will say that you have a few one-liners spread out, and between the images, they could get maybe lost a little bit. So it could be good to somehow like call more attention to it if you really want to call, I guess if you want to call attention to the text, right? So
Yeah.
maybe having like a separate text box on the side, or if someone's scrolling through it, you know, you have the big images, which are great, but the text can get lost.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, overall the visuals are great. One more thing I would say, I see the final prototype in conclusion, and I know it's a light, so you're really showing how the light is working. Do you guys have a light box in studio these days? I know we had one back when I was there.
Yeah. We have a light box. None of our lights could be set up like fully in the light box because it's a bit on the
Gotcha.
smaller side, which
Okay.
is why we use like the workshop table.
I will say, yeah, I'm seeing like the book being lit up, which looks great, but then I would like to see your product a little bit more. So maybe like more lighting on your light.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, the graphics do help, but it's really also cool to see how that translated into the prototype.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you.
Any other specific questions?
I think that basically answered most of my questions on here. I think I agree that like reducing text without having it completely easy to miss has been a pretty tricky thing to balance. Just because I used my design report to go into this, and that's a lot of text being reduced into a little bit. So it's been kind of difficult, like preserving the narrative and like, especially like decision points where I'm like, oh, we chose to go with this design as opposed to this one. I know that's like something I've been trying to emphasize, but I don't know if you've got any advice on like making sure like that like recruiters know like why I made certain decisions. Are there like any easy tips for like making sure that information is conveyed clearly?
A lot of that really will come through like when you are interviewing with someone, right? Because your portfolio is really meant to catch interviewer's eye, right? To make sure that you get to the step of talking to them. And then when you start speaking to them, a lot of those conversations will just kind of happen naturally. So I wouldn't put so much focus to describe your project standalone completely, right? I guess from my perspective, and anyone else on the call, you guys can chime in, any of the alums. But from my perspective, I look at a portfolio to see, okay, like what are you working on? What are your skills? Where do you shine? And how can, you know, the work that you're doing, the skills that you have can work with the person I'm looking for my open role, right? So it's a lot about like, okay, like let's look at some, you know, sketches are great. Talking about like exactly like, I know like you're not looking for engineering roles about mechanisms and things like that. But then once you do get to the interview stage, I really enjoyed talking to the person on, okay, how did you get here? Can you walk me through the thinking process? And, you know, some of those details maybe are best at conversations. And any alums have any more thoughts on that?
I think if you wanted to show more detail or show some more of like your thinking process and like highlight that in here, maybe some like text on some of these images to highlight issues with certain designs or things that were notable, or like a design that you liked. But I agree that like looking at a portfolio, it's really to like see something about the person, but you're going to get a lot more detail talking to them. And that comes from like the recruiter is probably, it doesn't even wouldn't even care too much about the details. They more just want to see like what kind of stuff you're looking at. Whereas once you can get in their system and actually start talking to a hiring manager, you can focus on the things that were important to you and get those details out.
Awesome. Yeah. I fully did not even realize that I could fully just put text on images. So that's a really good suggestion. And yeah, I never really like put much thought into what the interview was like. So that's very good feedback. Thank you.
Fariha, did you prepare anything to share or?
To be honest, my portfolio is 4 or 5 years old. I can maybe my partner actually recently updated his portfolio, and he's also a DIS alum, so I can showcase his maybe.
Of course.
I did ask him, so don't worry. He's aware. Let me see. Okay, so I guess one of the things, so this is actually one of his Studio 3 projects. And what I kind of like is what I was saying about the hierarchy, or like kind of easy to follow through some of the areas. And what I really like about his is kind of again, it is a lot of text, so maybe like a little bit less text, or 1-2 liners with some bullet points would be good, but you can kind of focus on, okay, so here's your background, prototyping. And I'm not saying you necessarily have to do it in tab format. I really like the way you had yours, Trinity, just scrolling down, but just making sure that there's a hierarchy that's easier to follow. So a recruiter, as they're looking through it quickly, they can kind of jump on, okay, like what did they do? What is the prototyping? What is the sketching? What's the ideation? And like, where did the final design lead up to? So that's kind of some of the high level. I think that's really it. Again, similar to yours, Trinity, I really love like showing the process. That's really important. I did mine, so I can also show you guys mine. It's so old. You can see that it will say 2019 is the last time I worked on it. I only had like one paragraph, and then as you go through it, you can see kind of like the sketching and all that. So you guys definitely already have a better portfolio than I did 4 years ago. Yeah, that's kind of the bigger message.
All right, thank you both. Thank you everyone for sharing. The next pairing that we have is Naomi and Andrea.
Hi guys. So I'm a DIS business management dual with a graphic design minor. And can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
I made my portfolio on Squarespace. I just wanted to see, I was on Wix for forever and I just wanted to try something new. So this was a project I did in Studio B with Jim. I think, I can't remember at this point, but I went through like the process. So these are screenshots from our like design report, and then I just put like little descriptions of what we did on the sides. The animations are kind of late. And then like I have a couple updates, like our little bee thing. Sorry, my roommate is trying to get food. Our little bee house actually survived the semester. I think it's still up on campus somewhere. So I had a little screenshot update of that, and ended up with the final like CAD model I did. And then I have a link to the actual design report that we did. And then like on the bottom is just my info.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I really love all of the images. I like that it's very image heavy. I think, similar to what Freya had said, you say we a lot during it and describing it, which is great for a group project. Definitely always give credit when you're in a group project, even if you want to include like your partner's names, just so there's an understanding of how many different people you worked with, because that can also play a role. Are all of your projects just you and one other person, or are you used to working with like 5 or 6 other people? Because the more people you work with, the more complicated things tend to get. So it's always good to show the experience and the number of people you have to work with. But definitely try to showcase specifically what you did for the project. Even if it ends up being, you were responsible for the logo, let's say, of the whole thing. I think you could go really deep into the logo design then, to really showcase what work you did. So you have a DIS business major with a minor in graphics. So I guess what kind of, you can do a lot with that. So what kind of roles are you interested in specifically?
Definitely somewhere in the design world. I'm just not too sure exactly what yet.
Okay. Do you think more like graphics or more physical, like tangible design or UX design?
I could go either way. I say product design a lot because I do enjoy like making physical products, but I do enjoy graphic design. Like I've been looking for like summer internships and stuff, and I've been kind of looking at both because I haven't had too much like actual real world experience in either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so my role definitely leans more towards the physical and industrial design as a packaging designer. So I can comment more so on that. And actually, this is a general comment maybe for everyone. Something that has come up a lot in my role recently and in our process is because we're trying to, bring products to market faster and faster, right? Considerations like the cost of things or how things are made come up a lot earlier in conversations. So if you are going down the physical, designing tangible things that are meant to be manufactured, having just a basic understanding of manufacturing processes would be huge. Kind of like the basic, injection molding, extrusion molding, just basic kind of manufacturing processes for plastics, because that a lot of times can really drastically change a design. So if you already say, oh, I thought about this, I know how it's going to be made, maybe how it's going to be manufactured, that could help a ton. So even if, maybe you don't take a class, if you can take like an online course somewhere, you don't have to go super in depth into it, but considering how these would be manufactured could go a long way.
Yeah, I thought I had included more about how we actually made these because
Hmm.
we went through like several different types of molds. Like we tried to 3D print some and laser cut some
Mhm.
to like the hexagon shape that you see.
Mhm.
So I think I'll add a couple of those. I thought I did.
No, it's okay. And then even if you add like next steps that you wish you had time to do, because a lot of times, you get to the end of the semester, you're trying to put together your final report and images, and it kind of just stops. It almost stops at the prototyping phase, or like the first round of prototypes. If you wanted to add a section that was, the next steps for this process would be, additional user testing, refinement, research into, manufacturing, life cycle analysis, just kind of showing that you're thinking about kind of the bigger picture and the full process, because it doesn't just stop after the first prototype.
Thank you.
I'm also in a similar boat where my portfolio hasn't been updated in a while, but I can share what I have. Sorry, it's asking me to allow the system preferences. I'm not a native Zoom user. All right, let's try this again. So if we actually go to this project, so this is just a good example of where, it was a group project. There was actually, I think, 7 of us on the team, so quite a few people that we all had to kind of manage and work together. And then specifically, I was responsible for a sub-component, so the handle design. So this is where I really kind of showcased specifically what I was doing as a part of this project. So you can, highlight that in different ways, because it is about, yes, the overall project, but specifically your skills and what you contributed to the project, and that's what you're going to be asked to talk about during the interview. And then, again, at the end, so this is a case where we could have gone a bit more into the manufacturing of it. We kind of just stopped at the prototyping. So ideally, you would see kind of how we would consider large scale manufacturing, or more research into even costs. Honestly, understanding how much things cost can go a long way early on in a process.
All right. Thank you guys so much. I personally have to go, and this will be hosted by Maya. But again, I just want to say thank you everyone for your feedback and everything. And yeah.
Okay, if we want to move on to Lila and Aaron, that'd be great if Lila would like to pull up their screen.
Hi. Can you hear me? So I am a DIS BME dual, and I am planning on doing grad school, so like my portfolio is kind of necessary for some of the programs I'm applying to, and just not as necessary for some of the other ones. Share my screen. So I guess like as an intro, this is for a project that I'm currently working on. So like it's a little out of date, and also like I will be adding a little bit more about end stage stuff since the project's getting funded and actually happening. So I started just like intro to the project, research. I know it's a lot of text, but also like a big part of this project was the research we did into it. So I really wanted to include a lot of that. And then actually it's on the approach. Since you went to RPI, I'm assuming you know what the approach is. But that's we're doing a soundscape on the approach. So as you walk up the approach and down the approach, you're going to be hearing 2 different narratives. So a all of these drawings are mine. That's like a big contribution for projects for me is like doing the art. 'Cause that's something I really enjoy doing. And so like I know I have and then at the end credits. And I always link to like my design reports at the end of my project pages just because I feel like that helps with like if they want more information, they can look at that. Because there is a lot more information in this project that I just like I feel like it's really hard to like narrow down. Yeah, then I'm aiming to go into more the engineering side of things. So I don't know how much I'm going to need a portfolio for that, but I like having something to show like projects and the fact that I know how to work in groups and stuff. So.
Lila, do you have any specific questions maybe for Erin?
I don't know if it's like I know I want to include like a lot of the research. I don't know if like you think I should cut that down more. Also, like in terms of end stage project stuff, what should I be including in terms of like a project getting funded? Like, should I be including budget information? Should I be including like obviously I want to include like pictures of like what the final like visual elements look like and all of that. Because I haven't really had any projects like actually get funded before, so I'm not sure how to address that like in a portfolio.
Sorry, could you repeat that? I think Erin got stuck in the waiting room.
Yeah, sorry about that. I accidentally dropped off this.
How much did you hear?
The last sentence. I'm
Okay.
so sorry.
Yeah, so this is my portfolio. So this is for my current project that I'm working on. So I'm a BME DIS dual, and this project's getting funded by RPI. So like it's in the stages of actually happening. So my portfolio is like a little bit out of date on it. And also just like there's gonna end up being more stuff I want to include. But I just kind of start with an introduction to the project and like what the goal of the project is. Research for the project, which like I know is a lot of text, but is also like a big part of this project and a lot of the projects I do. So I really like focusing on that. Like if they don't want to read it, they don't have to read it. Was kind of the approach I took. And then so we're doing a soundscape on the approach at RPI. So this is like our main visual for that, with just like obviously like not a visual thing, that's an auditory thing, but like laying that out. And then other pictures of that. And then the visualization, which like we're planning on changing all the lights to the approach at the pink and potentially some other stuff depending on how much funding we get and the amount of time we have. So my main questions are like if it is too much text, how would you recommend like paring that down? And like what should I include from end stage project information? Because like this project is getting funded. So like how much of like the budgeting should I include, like if any? Obviously like pictures of like end stage like project stuff is great, but like besides that, what else should I be including?
And
yeah.
And what kinds of like who do you want the audience for this to be? Like what kinds of roles are you looking for?
Yeah, so I'm a BME DIS dual, so like a lot of my DIS stuff doesn't directly relate to what I'm doing, but I'm planning on going into like research and designs. So like that's part of the reason I want to like really highlight like research stuff and like aesthetics and things like that. I want to design prosthetics. I'm mainly looking at grad schools right now and not like actual jobs. So like that's also like a consideration for me.
One thing I guess I'll touch on one of the questions you had asked that I like how much of that end stage of the design or like the process of actually getting this built. I actually think from my perspective, I think that's pretty interesting and could also just show depending like what kind of specific involvement you personally had could show like initiative or like dealing with organizations and people and pushing your ideas through to get funding for something like this.
Dealing with RPI's administration.
Yeah. I don't know if there's a way to probably talk about, I'm sure a lot of that was difficult, but a way to like talk about either with text or like diagrams that could show the like all the different organizations that you worked with on actually getting this to become real.
Mhm.
Also on the text, I did think at first I didn't read the research section when I skimmed through, like read through this earlier. But as I read the later parts, I came back and read those. So actually, of that part, I really don't have a concern with. Maybe you could add like a paragraph break or two just to keep it easier to read.
Okay.
And for the other parts, I thought some of the text was great and nice to have, but also could be helpful to like maybe have some more text on images or like display some of these points graphically. Like some of these you could just like point on to something on the image, on this image or a different one, and talk like exactly why is it designed this way. It does also have a little less it doesn't show as like the imagery that's here is really great, and I think it's clear and shows like what this experiential thing I think would be like. But if there's any other like early process type sketches that could potentially be interesting, or like more implementation details, like how are you actually coloring the lights, what kinds of like specifics around the different features, and I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, so I haven't updated my portfolio this semester yet, and a lot of that is like what we're doing this semester. So like a lot of last semester was like concept work, and like it wasn't until the very end where we did like prototyping of anything. So like I do agree that I should probably put more of that in. I just like haven't got around to it yet.
The one other thing that I really wanted, which may not be ready yet, but I really wanted to hear the audio from each of those.
Yeah, we don't have that ready yet, but I would love to like link some of that. It's going to be the way we're doing the audio is through like a soundscape. Like it's already like software that exists that you can use to make soundscapes. And the way it works is you can like scan a QR code and it'll bring it up on your phone and listen to it through your own headphones. So it's not like actual like physical speakers on the approach or anything. Since everybody already has a phone with them and headphones normally, especially on RPI campus. So I'm pretty sure I can just link to that through the site itself. So you could actually like listen to the audio and the experience itself once that's done.
Okay. Overall, yeah, I thought this page came together pretty well. I do think like the more you can break up the text to make it easier to read, it's just easier. A lot of these bigger blocks I found like a little harder to get through, even if a lot of the content was good.
Yeah. Thank you.
And overall, I like this Wix like template or whatever it is. I just think it looks clean and allows you to have some hierarchy. And I would also maybe like lean into that, like just lean into sort of separating out the different things that you want to highlight as different sections, that if you are skimming, you can skim through and see all the things that you looked at and then focus on the ones that draw your eye or seem more interesting for whoever the reader, like what their context is.
Okay.
I also want to reinforce what Aaron said about like dealing with the complexity of like selling people on this idea. I think that's really interesting and something that you might want to capture as part of this project, because it definitely comes up in interviews and stuff, and people want to know like if you have a wild idea, like how do you bring people on board, especially if the system that you're dealing with is really complicated and you're working with a lot of different organizations and people that you have to bring on board. Like what does that process look like? And I'm not really sure exactly how to implement this or how to describe that for this project, but something to think about, like trying to bring through.
This project specifically being implemented like and funded through RPI because it's RPI's bicentennial this year. So like RPI is like looking for things, and like as part of that, we were like to honor like the woman who went to RPI, and then we also wanted to honor the woman who went to Troy, because the big thing they're focusing on is connecting Troy and RPI and like kind of integrating the city into the RPI campus more, because currently it's not. So like that's kind of one of our goals with this project. And I think definitely like this semester we've been doing a lot more of like dealing with administration and like who owns the approach and how do we deal with that, and how do we get things actually implemented.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that'd be really cool to describe like all those different organizations and people that you had to bring on board and how you did it. Um, Also, random
definitely.
idea. What if you turn this whole thing into like your like it was all recorded audio or something instead of text, and you like instead of like turned your page into a walking approach almost. I don't know how that would how that
How I
experience
would
would
do
work, but maybe for certain parts of it you could like have recorded sections or something. So really like it's almost like you're reenacting it only to describe the project. I don't know. Random idea.
Thank you.
Pretty fun. One other thought I had is this is honoring all these women. It would be really cool to have pictures of them where possible, at least
Yeah.
on
So we
here.
don't, some of them just don't have pictures. But I can add some pictures of the ones we do have pictures of. It depends. Some of them are like I've searched everywhere for pictures of some of these women and they just like don't exist. As far as I can tell. So, which is kind of sad.
Yeah.
But I would like to include, I think that's a good thing to include. I'll definitely add some of that.
Erin, did you have anything you'd like to share kind of on similar notes?
Sure, I can. I had like a portfolio on my website and I recently took it off because it was very out of date. Second. But I ended up making a slideshow for some interviews I was doing, highlighting a project in a previous job I had, and I'll share that and step through it and step through some of my like design decisions there. So, oh no. Okay, I'll step through it this way. I started by highlighting some of my previous work, but I'll go to the project that I had. I had a Bert Swarzy quote or paraphrase. He's an old professor at RPI. But I wanted to highlight, I used to work at Apple on the iPhone product design team, and the iPhone 14 went through a big redesign where the outside looked pretty much the same, but it flipped the internal architecture to enable better repairability of the back glass. And I worked through some like key problems or key issues that I solved with this, and I tried to like highlight different areas that were interesting or that were like fairly different as part of the product design process. One of them was just like the Tetris game of fitting all the things inside the phone. Another one was like showcasing a lot of my work on the electrical side. So I worked on the main logic board, the main PCB on the phone, and on that part. And then I looked at thermal design and some considerations for like part reliability and manufacturing. And I'll step through some of these slides. This one I went over what the changes were and that essentially flipped the architecture. The previous design had the back glass glued to the phone, but the goal for the new one was that it was totally removable, and that you could remove the back glass and access the internal components from there. Historically, accessing the components happened to the display side. So while it sort of just mirrored everything and flipped it, ended up being a big redesign effort. And with these slides, this was like for an interview where I could speak to all the points, but I wanted to make sure that at least some of these images could partially stand alone or could act as like something that I could speak to. So this speaks to like how we were able to, we added another side that had components on the MLB, but we had to squeeze this into a phone that only grew by 0.2 millimeters. So that was a big study, involved working with a lot of people on the team. That's what I highlighted here. On this one, when we flipped our design, we flipped how all these connectors that connect like buttons, cameras, display, battery, how those all connect to the board. And they essentially connected to the wrong board of this 2-board stack, which meant we needed all these extra pins to connect all these extra connectors, which gave us reliability issues and was also just a big effort of understanding where everything was in this product and reconnecting it to the board again. Here I used imagery with also like an instructive diagram that wasn't really accurate. This is nothing I ever made at work, but it was like helpful for discussing what was going on here. Another one I looked at thermals, in detail, and we did a lot of like thermal simulations, but also once I left, I couldn't like show those thermal simulations, or I didn't even have them. So here I made like an instructive image and sort of showed some cross sections here that showed exactly what we did to mitigate some of these thermal issues that we were having. Again, these were like mock-up images, but they might not be real, but they were helpful to describe like the issues that I was going through and the problems that we were solving. And yeah, this was another one where I mocked up some images. This wasn't exactly correct or accurate, but I was trying to show how when we flipped our design, we changed how the board mounted in the system. The new one was like flexier and it caused high stress in some critical locations. And I'm with all these images, I tried to like call out critical things that even if you're just looking at this and not listening to me talk, you could still understand what's like the key things that I was looking at. I think for a lot of the portfolios that we've looked at so far, I thought like a little more text or like arrows pointing at things on some of the slides or images could be helpful, and whoever's looking at them understand a lot more there. And here I sort of just ended with going over what I had done again. Any questions or like thoughts? That's all.
You said you made those images just for like specifically for that presentation, right?
Yeah. They were all, I didn't have any like actual CAD or things that I can steal from my job. So I mocked them up as best I could. Some are like very close to being accurate. Other ones were more instructive for like the point I was trying to make versus being like actually accurate. It doesn't matter as much as long as it's like it tells the story that you're trying to tell. And that was one thing I think with a lot of these is like come at it with like a goal or a story that you want people to get out of it, and that can help like guide your hierarchy and guide like where you're going to focus.
I also had a quick question. So I noticed that I'm guessing with your like presentation, it's being shown to people who know the ins and outs of like manufacturing phones and the whole process that you're involved with. So I guess it's slightly removed from your specific presentation, but how would you recommend, especially for people who are more involved in the engineering side of things, like mechie majors, should they be like, or should we be explaining like all of the mechanical details? Like what level of knowledge should we assume that the people viewing our portfolio have?
So that one actually was, the audience was engineers that have designed consumer electronics, but they didn't really necessarily know how the product was like designed and constructed. And that was something that I made sure to talk to, like, and try and highlight what was critical for them to know in each case. Sometimes like it can be helpful to do a high level, like this is where all the things were. I think one of the criticisms that I have of that presentation based on the questions that people asked me was that it was sometimes hard. Like I knew this thing so well, like by the back of my hand, and translating that in a short interview timeline, but also getting like those key points across was a little, took a little more explanation sometimes than I expected. Sometimes like I think back to that like story that you're trying to tell, and if you're trying to talk through one mechanism in the design, maybe like a small exploded view or like a cross section or something that highlights exactly the like 5 critical components for that, but you can leave off a lot of the other stuff that's not as important for that audience. But yeah, a lot of that comes back to like, what's the story? If I have a slide or like a page or like a section of a portfolio, like what do I really want them to get out of here? And that will drive like the rest of what you throw in.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you for that great example. Okay, now we can move on to our last group. Austin and Sarah. If Sarah could get their portfolio up, that'd be great.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So my name is Sarah Fain. I'm a DIS major, and I'm doing a dual minor in marketing and graphic design. Sorry, I had to think about that. Okay, so I went with less text heavy and more just like what I produced. And so I'll be showcasing everything from like graphic design pieces to actual product pieces. And so right now, my rationale for having a PDF is I'm building a skeleton so that I can then hopefully move it into Figma. And so right now I'm just kind of getting a gauge of, okay, how am I laying stuff out? Is it well done? Do I need more of the design process? Maybe design process more for actual product design versus graphic design. So those were my questions. But so here is a course, brand identity design. I think I took it last year, and essentially you can either redesign a brand or create a brand yourself. And so I just briefly described that this is this is what we needed to produce, and then I just kind of showed the stationery, the logo variations, clear space rules, color scheme, icons, and then on the next slide I have maybe a mock-up for a website or what tickets could look like, but then also fully designed jerseys, everything from home, away, and then alternate. And so then I just put that there. I have yet to title these. And my thought process is, okay, so you see the portfolio, maybe this is interview where I would go into more detail if they had questions on something, is why I felt like I would leave more text out on more graphic design pieces versus more product based. Maybe I would probably have to include a little bit more process. Yeah, let me make sure I've asked my questions. You answered before basically saying if some people don't have an online version of their PDF, you don't consider them. So it's something I definitely have to do. And then the other one was just how much design process should I include?
Yeah. Sure. So just so I looked at your portfolio beforehand, and I guess just positives right off the bat is your choice of typeface and the way you've sort of laid out each page is really nice, and sort of your personal visual identity plays nicely with each of your projects. So I think that's that's a big plus. I would say, what's some of my feedback? So I guess where can we start? I would say in terms of, so you have, right now it's one project, I think, for every page except for the Utah Rattlers one. So I wouldn't be too concerned about page length. Especially my last role was agency side, and when you're building these decks for client presentations, you have to sort of think about how you unpack this thing, both in a presentation when you're physically there, but how the client is going to sort of flip through it and progress through it on their own. And I think especially for a graphic design role, or if you're presenting a graphic design project, having really big pieces of content is really important. So maybe not so much on the Rattlers one, but you had a project at the beginning that's your album design cover. Yeah. So this is really great work, but in sort of the page design, a lot of it is sort of too small to see. And it also just, it does yourself a disservice because you've designed, these really core assets, the front, the back, a mock-up with the record, but there's all sorts of ways that you can sort of cut this up into bigger pieces of content for each page. So focusing on the type, focusing in on the illustration, and really giving those a lot of space to breathe on each page. And then for the text, if you want to put it, designers take a lot of different approaches. You can front load it, so you can put sort of all the project context at the front, or on the first page, or you can kind of intersperse it, when it's relevant. But I think, giving all of your assets and your visual media room to breathe is really important, even if it's pushing the page number really far. When people are flipping through visual content, they aren't thinking about it. If they're not reading things, they'll just flick through and sort of view it as if, you know, they're kind of flipping through a book. So I think that's sort of one suggestion. And then you asked too about you know, when do you include more process? And I think for at least like the branding side, you don't see, unless you're doing, it has to make sense, right? So like if you've done a logo that's like really kind of handcrafted with like lots of sketching, those are like great things that you can include if you're able to sort of like present it in a really aesthetic way. So like scan it and like vectorize it, or just have like a really nice sort of like image that you're able to put up, as long as it doesn't sort of detract from like the visual flow of the entire project. I think what's probably more important on like the graphic design brand side is not showing like sort of the process of you crafting it, but sort of if it's a logo that has meaning embedded in it or like visual metaphor and like a visual identity, showing like that back rationale. So like, you know, if the logo is two symbols coming together and forming something else, showing each side of that deconstructed and then the like fully constructed form, I think is an important way to show your rationale, but also the sort of meaning that you're building in to the brands or the graphics and the content that you're presenting. Yeah, I think that's like most of the things that I was thinking of in terms of feedback. Yeah, sort of another one is in your Utah Rattlers project, you had like a lot of great mock-ups. I would just challenge you to, especially from like a branding graphic perspective, get those higher fidelity. There's like really easy templates now. There's a website called Mr. Mockup that has like tons of really high quality, really easy to use templates for like Photoshop and Figma. Just because I think when you're either presenting to another designer or a hiring manager or a potential client, being able to see things like in context of like where they're going to be used in a visual that doesn't take you out of it. You know, if it's a really fake looking mock-up, then it sort of breaks that simulation of trying to represent the graphics and the brand in real life. So if you can have really high fidelity mock-ups, it helps take the person from being like just a sort of receiver of the information you're trying to convey to actually like understanding more about the brand or the, you know, the identity or the poster that you've designed. So I think that can be a really important but like kind of overlooked piece to sort of representing your work in a presentation.
Okay,
But,
thank you. I think that's
yeah.
everything from me.
Okay. Overall, like really nice stuff. Yeah, just I think if you give, you know, zoom in on everything, you know, make it a little bit more dense and then visually and like get it online, it'll be really great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can share some of the things that I just, so I can show you first my own portfolios as well as just I think some examples that will be helpful for everyone in terms of how to represent your work online. Can you guys see the ampersand site?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, cool. So this is my one sort of like freelancing, basically studio site. A lot of my work is sort of bifurcated into two industries. So I do a lot of property work. So these are like brand visual identities for lots of commercial real estate, work with like placemaking projects with governments, local governments, mostly in China, or you know, anything from like, commercial property development to like, one of these is like a restaurant in Shanghai. So they're all sort of place focused. And then the sort of other end of my work is all around consumer products. Some of those are hardware, things like smartphones and other kind of consumer gadgets coming out of China. And then other ones are like a couple software products. But so I've sort of split my entire portfolio like this because a lot of the clients that I'm pitching exist in one of those two buckets. And yeah, it's sort of really simple. The site is mostly set up so that I can, when you're pitching different clients, there's a process called credentialing, and when you're supposed to show that you've kind of worked with a set of companies on different projects. And so this is mostly set up for that so that I can just send links for different projects to specific clients. But so I've really kind of front loaded a lot of the information at the beginning, like my role, and any press links are included here, and then goes into the content. I have some other sort of like bits of text to give more context. And yeah, it's fairly standard. I think there's probably, I'll show a couple other examples that are not mine that I think are a little bit more creative with how they present content. But yeah, this is sort of a very typical case study for me. And then, so I guess one thing to point out is getting this site online is like sort of was very important for me now because I'm freelancing. But when you're in-house somewhere, as I think a lot of you will probably go on to do, is when you're in-house, the same thing happens like when you're in school, right? You put off updating the portfolio, you're too busy with work, blah, blah, blah. So I think an important thing that I've tried to do in keeping my work updated while I'm still in-house somewhere and kind of just working on internal projects is having avenues to sort of just get content online. So I work a lot as a motion designer, and so using Vimeo for that type of work has been really helpful. So while this website I've published fairly recently, the Vimeo is like where I really go to sort of just upload things as they go live into the marketplace. And so this is sort of what I use as like just getting it up online so that it's, you know, worst case, if you have like a project coming in, you can just send them like a Vimeo link rather than like a whole case study on your website. So I think that's sort of like a helpful strategy on how to still have your work represented online when you're super busy. Yeah, and then just a couple quick examples I think there's like a lot of great things happening from small agencies and freelancers right now that are trying to do creative things that sort of reevaluate the portfolio construct. And just wanted to highlight, I think I can just do one, but there's this agency in Philadelphia, Smith and Diction. They do lots of like really great brand work. But I love what they've done with their portfolio. It's so geared towards people just learning more about their case studies and their work and sort of putting potential clients into their marketing funnel. So their website is actually really simple. It's like basically this landing page, and then everything links out. So they do a lot of web design. So things will link out to a website, but then for the portfolio, for like the actual case studies, it'll actually link out to a Medium article. So they've basically built all of their case studies in Medium. I think one part of that is like it makes it super easy to put together as the project's like going live, because it's like within the Medium platform. Another part is it's really low maintenance because you're not having to sort of maintain your own website. And then the third part is that it's like plugged into a larger content system, so they get views and traffic that are not related to people just coming to their website. So there's a lot of really great stuff at play with like the way they've sort of structured their portfolio. And just one other thing that they do really great. One thing I always felt in especially in school is like the struggle to make things that I thought were high fidelity enough to put on a website. And I would say one of the most overlooked ways that you can sort of convey a sense that you know what you're doing and that you have a personality and that you have a point of view in the world of design is through copywriting. And the great thing about copywriting is that, you know, you can choose a different font or whatever, but written word is always going to, you know, read the same way. It's not sort of a visual element. And so these guys, Smith and Diction, are just really good at sort of doing copywriting that, one, makes you want to read more of the case study, but two, conveys like a bit of their personality as an agency and a team. They have this one great line that's like, oh yeah, a lesson in full assing. So yeah, they just like, they have these little bits that like, if you read close enough, it kind of like warms you to them and tells you a little bit more about them as a group, and wants you to, makes you want to keep reading. So yeah, I think it's kind of like a whole lot of examples, but I just wanted to sort of talk about those because I think these are important ways to sort of think about, you know, looking for jobs and looking for the next steps after the DIS program. How do you sort of occupy space online? How do you represent yourself? How do you sort of put these things out in a way that is conveying what you're working on, but also not like so time intensive that you keep pushing it off and never kind of updating it. So yeah, I hope this is helpful, even though it was a lot.
That was really great. Thank you. Well, that concludes all of our Direct 101 like portfolio crits. But we were hoping that if anyone still had any questions, all of the alum who'd feel comfortable could put their contact information in the chat so that people could continue to reach out and maybe connect. That would be really great if you could do that. And then more generally, we wanted to just thank everyone for showing up. That's everyone who came to watch, but also everyone who presented, especially the alum for dedicating your time towards helping us. We really appreciate it. We're going to be in your shoes one day and hopefully we'll do the same. And but yeah, we really appreciate all the help you guys are doing. And this this recording of this Zoom will be up on our YouTube. So if anyone ever wants to rewatch it and really go back into those tips and everything, that will be there soon. So we're probably going to wrap it up a couple minutes early, unless anyone had any more direct questions they'd like to share.
Yeah, Maya, I just have one quick general question for you guys. I know, like, I'm going to speak specifically to my point of view. I'm a mechanical engineer. I'm currently focusing more on control systems engineering, mostly with my master's work and stuff like that. I'm curious, like, just in general, I don't have a portfolio. I'm a senior, but I do have a job. So, like, at what point do you think you should continue, like, should you continue to build and keep updating your portfolio? Or is it something that, like, after you reach a certain level of criteria, finesse in industry, you don't really need anymore?
I guess I had a website with a portfolio and I took off all the stuff that was on it because it was out of date. I wasn't putting the time to make it up to date. I started trying to, and I didn't get the like formatting figured out. So I thought I'd just pull that off. And it worked for me, but it was really helpful to have that slide deck that was required for one set of interviews I did, but I used it for other ones that really went into detail on a specific recent thing that I had done. So at a certain point, I'd say it's like you'll know if you have enough to talk about, but it's hard to say like when that defined point was. Having a website and a portfolio definitely helped me get my first couple jobs. 100%.
Yeah, I'll definitely agree. Like early on, you definitely want to have a portfolio. When I'm looking for candidates, whether it's right out of school or even interns, that really makes a difference and, me being attracted to them to interview. However, I will say like maybe later in your career, if you're looking to do something different, I would say that's when it really comes into play. Then you want to showcase the new type of role you're looking for. However, like because I know I really enjoy consumer products and I want to stay in this course, people know the name of my company generally in the industry. So if I were to go to a different interview, I wouldn't necessarily need a whole portfolio, but maybe like since I've launched a few products, I could say, hey, like I launched these products, check them out if you're curious, and then we can talk about it. So it really depends on where you're trying to go, how much you're trying to deviate from your current role. And yeah.
Also something to think about is as you the longer you work and specifically what kind of field you go into, it may get harder to show some of the work you've done. So like a lot of the work that I've done, I can't put in a portfolio because it hasn't launched yet. It's IP sensitive. If you're on the agency side and you do a lot of work as a contractor for different companies, some of the upfront stuff might be might be theirs. They might own it, right? Any of your kind of concept designs. So it can get a little difficult. So you may have to start doing kind of your own side projects just to showcase your skills, or like just examples of kind of going through the steps of your process and kind of making a fake product, let's say. So I think it's definitely helpful kind of as you go, just to one, share your skills, and even just showing like, I'm sure your skills once you've started out, like having a portfolio when you first graduate is super important. 5 years from now, your skills are going to be, 5 years better, right? So you kind of want to make sure you're showing your best and most current self.
I'll add that like an aspect of portfolios that never gets talked about that I at least appreciate is for myself, like at least on like the traditional design, graphic design side, you're like putting out so much work, and if you're cataloging it online, being able to go back and like look and be like, oh, like that's right, I did that, like that's awesome, or like just having a place where you can sort of reference it and go back and have a look at it, I think is just really useful for myself. Just having an online record of the things I've been able to work on is something that I go back to a lot, just to sort of review. You work heads down on so many projects and you sort of forget the output sometime, and so it's nice to be able to go back and be like, oh yeah, like did this and was able to get that out. So I think that's like another important part that people don't give a whole lot of credit, like place a lot of value on.
Thank you guys. I know like I intern mostly at General Motors, so I totally understand the IP sensitive, like can't release things for years kind of mentality. So thank you.
I have a question. I think this might be most relevant for Austin, but anyone else chime in. But how would you navigate like marketing yourself if what you wanted to do was enter a freelance world, or where you're kind of working for yourself before you even try to do something more corporate?
Yeah, I will say difficult route. I will say I'm freelancing now, but that's after 9 years of being in-house at like a company like IBM and all these big consumer tech companies where I've built really sort of like robust alumni networks. And so that's where a lot of my work comes from, is like having these alumni groups of people that I've worked with at like sort of the startup level type of companies that go on to then do their own thing. So I will say it's probably a hard route, but I think just look for look for ways that you can sort of break through. I think like, especially on things like Instagram now, you see so much design work. It's just like flooded through. It's like just reels after reels of like kind of conceptual design work. So thinking about, you know, ways that you can be a little bit more intentional about how you sort of get your name out there. So there's some people that just will like push work out on Instagram like every day. And I think if you're trying to learn, like if you're trying to develop your logo skill, like logo design skills or video skills, that's like a great way actually, because it's like practice and forcing you to get something online. But if you're looking to like really land definitive clients, you need some sort of like PR pipeline, right? So maybe like you do work, like you do sort of a comprehensive project and then you figure out how to get featured on like all these design publications that sort of feature solo designers. Like It's Nice That, Creative Boom, they lend a lot of sort of airtime to like solo designers that do like a for fun project. So maybe, yeah, like going deeper with something that's conceptual, but then trying to get a like bit of like design media placement is probably, I would say, more effective time spent than like just pushing stuff into the void of Instagram. That's a tough question though. I think it's, yeah. I mean, even starting just small and like taking like small gigs that on like Fiverr or something that is like paid practice, I think could be a really good way to sort of work up to like bigger projects, and it gets you practice with sort of you know, payment contracts and how to price yourself and price your work. So that could also be another good way. The biggest thing is like you don't want to do a whole bunch of free work. So you got to figure out like weird little ways to get paid for things. That also includes practice, because that's the biggest thing, right? Is like, how do you get paid to do something that you can put on a portfolio, but also is like teaching you a skill at the same time? So I don't know if that's a good answer. We can maybe offline, I can think about it more. But yeah, it's tough, but you just kind of have to take a very sort of like intentional, make an intentional plan, I think.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Great tips. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll probably wrap it up for the day. Thank you again to everyone. Feel free to reach out. And yeah, that'll be it. Thank you. Have a great